Welcome this morning, this Thanksgiving morning, to our Dealing with Big Emotions Sacred Self-Healing Workshop. It's part of our Self-Mastery series here in 2022. And if you have been following along, you know that preceding this practice workshop, we've already had 5 others dealing with our thoughts and our thinking and learning about the connection between our thoughts and our emotions. So I am hoping that you have peeked into those, because we won't be able to discuss all the different terms that are needed to understand everything that I'm saying. If not, then just back up, see the links that you will get with this recording for the previous self-mastery workshops. But back to Thanksgiving, here in the United States, big holiday, the holiday of saying thanks. And I want to start out with saying thanks to you guys. Thank you for being such a loyal audience and such a beautiful, integrous self-healing group. I'm happy to see all of you guys. Yes, and I'm seeing your texts already. Wonderful. Today's topic is dealing with big emotions. Aha. And, well, you guys all know me. We don't need to go through this. We will illuminate what emotional dysregulation is today, which is basically the opposite of self-mastery. And in psychological terms, when we're unable to master our emotions, when our emotions run our lives, when they make our relationships difficult, when they make it difficult for us to work or to live in certain situations, then we speak of dysregulation. So we're going to learn a lot about this, and we're going to start out with a quiz. You're going to like this. Then we're going to share a little bit about what it is that you found is particularly upsetting, or, that can trigger your floodgates, your emotional floodgates, to open in an uncontrolled way. Again, here, we've already illuminated this. Do not mistake having emotions with acting out emotionally. So one of the big ahas here of the previous couple of workshops was that we need to differentiate. We need to see that there are different stages. There's an emotional processing in us, and that's individual to each and every one of us. And then there is the emotion itself and the effect it has on our body and our thinking. And then there is the expression. And as a self-healing self-master, where we want to come in is in between those three. We want to come in and understand our own emotion better. We want to understand why it can trigger us and what happens once it's triggered. And we want to come in at the choice of how to express it. So once more, having an emotion is not the same as bringing it into expression. The purpose of self-mastery is to increase the quality of our expression, basically to find the higher expression. And that's important to understand here, because most of you are energetically sensitive and or empaths. And why this workshop is different than from what you can look up on YouTube is because we're looking at the energetic quality of our emotions and learn holistic self-mastery. This isn't just about emotions. Aren't the problem, guys. You already know that. Emotions are important signals, inner signals that provide a roadmap for us. But without the deeper understanding, without the bigger picture and the context in which they occur, why they occur, and what they're trying to tell us, the interpretation, it becomes very, very difficult for us to get a handle on this. And for as long as we feel powerless, we will have or will get stuck in this cycle of dysregulated expression, lower vibratory expressions, feelings of guilt or resentment, projecting, absorbing, yeah, sucking up too much, and then eventually bursting out again. So this is a cycle, a vicious cycle that we want to learn to break through. Yeah, and one of the things that we've learned from energy work already, and this is also in your sacred self-healing steps, has to do with shifting our energy. Shifting our energy changes the way we see the world, it changes the way we think, it changes the way we emote. And therefore, sometimes we can't really change what we're thinking or what we're emoting, although we're trying to get better at it. It's a constant sort of striving for better expressions. But what we can do is shift the energy around it. And this is the novelty here. This is really the trick with energy work, is that we can bypass our thoughts and emotions, not by shutting them down, but by investigating them, by feeling into them. Be careful, I'm not talking about feeling into emotions. I'm talking about feeling into the energy, the energetic quality of our emotions, by educating ourselves and learning better ways. Yeah. So we're going to hopefully work our way up here to the, I want to call them theoretical stages of mastering our emotions. Theoretical because obviously this is a continual practice that is needed, and getting to the place where you really feel that you can handle about anything, that takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of practice. Yeah, so don't let your thoughts and emotions determine your life. So let's get started with a little bit of sharing here. Your microphones can be controlled by yourself. So if you would like to step up and share with us what your big issue is, or your issue is with big emotions. There's multiple different issues that can arise when it comes to big emotions. So let's just put together here what the most common themes are for us. Who would like to start? Who wants to share?
Hi, it's Annette.
Hi, Annette.
My favorite is to avoid emotions.
Okay, to avoid emotions altogether. Do you have an...
Or at least emotions that I don't like. Emotions that I think or feel is good. It's okay, but fear and anxiety and such emotions, the most of my life I have tried to avoid them.
Okay, so this is something that we've discussed in the last 2 workshops. What is a good emotion? What is a bad emotion? Is there even something like that, right? Because we know that, obviously there are some emotions that feel better than others. And especially when it comes to like what we call negative emotions, right? They don't just make us not feel good. They can become responsible for not being able to control our emotions.
Yeah.
So what I hear you say is that one of your big issues is in your effort to avoid the negative emotions.
Yeah.
You may actually suppress all emotions. Is that what I'm hearing?
Many. I think I avoid them and go to my head instead.
Yes. Okay. So that's really cool. That's something that many of you discovered here in the last 2 workshops. Yeah, that your emotional processing sort of makes you go sort of certain ways. Okay, that's just part of our coping mechanism, and like I've said before, they're different for each and every one of us. Yeah. So in your case, and again here I'm paraphrasing, I'm finding new ways of expressing what you just said, just so that we all on the same page. In your effort to control your emotions, you may first and foremost process them mentally, intellectually.
Yeah.
And in the process, you may, I'm saying may because I know you're working on this, so this is a big part, obviously, of all our lives here, but you've discovered that you may suppress, like you actually from feeling any emotions.
Yeah.
The range of emotions gets very small. When we have a fear of a certain type of emotion. You mentioned fear. What was the other? You said the anxiety, and what else did you say?
Anxiety and also shame.
Shame.
Yeah.
And anger, right? Anger is something
yeah.
that we discussed a lot in the last workshop.
Yeah.
So fear, anger, and shame. There are some more that most people experience, obviously, as something negative. But let's investigate what this negativity is, and why we feel it to be negative, and why we have developed these coping mechanisms. Because without understanding why we're doing this, all right, it's very hard to stop it. We need to have a better idea of what is actually going on and the order in which things are going on. So I like the fact that you've already identified for yourself that when big emotions come on, that you have a tendency to suppress them altogether and to go in your head, to go in your mind with it.
And
That's
then
a
I
pretty
can
common one.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how well does this work for you, Anita? I mean, this coping way that you've developed?
No, it does not work very well.
Okay, so what's the problem then? How does this then show that it doesn't work well?
Well, the emotions pop up in other situations, and
Okay.
Yeah, it will not. In other situations that I can't control, and in the way I gets more fear and more anxiety. It's escalated.
So it comes out at inappropriate times.
Yeah,
it builds
exactly.
up, and then
yeah,
like maybe at work, or in an important discussion with someone. So suppressing emotions, you found out, doesn't work that well, because they're still there somewhere.
Yeah.
And if they get triggered, they can come out at inappropriate times or in an overreaction, right?
Yeah.
In like becoming too strong.
Yeah.
And that's then typically what we call big emotion. That's a big emotion.
And it does not work, because I don't. I know I do not express myself in a good way, and what I want, I do not get what I want, because my expressions is much too harsh or something like that.
Too harsh, or too abrupt, or too too mental, probably also, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It may be hard for other people to understand what you're feeling because you're suppressing it so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Annette. It's a really good representation of how many people feel about big emotions. So we have coping ways, and we keep doing them, but they don't actually work that well for us. Let's hear from someone else how this plays out in their life. Who else wants to share?
I can share, because I've just been through some stuff, and and it's not the first time. and hearing Aneta's explanation how it happens for her, I knew immediately that I never feel shame. I don't feel shame, but then afterwards I have a bad conscience for not feeling shame. So I get into this looping stuff, and I also tell myself that it's healthy because I don't want to block it in. I want it out. But I know that this seminar is about letting it out in a healthy way, because mine doesn't always come out healthy. I will say that I feel very, very tired afterwards. I do let it out.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tina. Thank you for mentioning this. When emotions come out in a dysregulated way, it can really trash our energy more than anything else. But I hear what you're saying. So there's a part in you that knows that, you know, getting your emotions out is a good thing. Yeah, that it's healthy for you. But you seem to, and again, I'm paraphrasing, you seem to struggle with finding the right measure or finding the right expression, and then you get stuck in a cycle of guilt. Yeah, feeling bad about it, maybe about the damage that you've done to other people's feelings in the process. So you don't have a problem with letting it out, but it comes out maybe in a way that you regret later.
Yeah.
That's a different, that's a
it hadn't
slightly
always
different.
been like that. When I was younger, I wouldn't let it out. And so I have some experience from that. And once I did smash a beautiful coffee kettle because I'm angry, and that stuck with me because I really had regrets about that. But the anger just led to I threw it in the woods outside and out the window.
Okay, so you're coping with the coping. You already found out that repression is not that good. Okay, and you're trying to find the better ways, and now you're seeing, or you know, the latest or like where you're getting stuck now is in understanding that it's important to let emotions out, but not quite finding a way that it feels balanced within yourself.
Yeah, because I rather feel better afterwards because I've dealt with it, and you know, it's something is reasonable about it. But and there can be something reasonable, but that goes out the window because it goes too far, and then everything is mud, and then you can't even remember why it started. That's bad.
So what you're talking about, as far as like the problem with big emotions, is that you have a tendency to today or nowadays to go into outbursts and big spikes of emotions.
Yes.
So it's not like, you know, sort of in a medium way that you can handle it. It goes really, really strongly up, and then maybe some time afterwards where you can't feel anything for a while.
Yes.
So this is slightly different than what Annette shared. Obviously, underneath all of those problems with our emotional expression are similar aspects, but the way we choose to deal with things has a lot to do with our disposition, with our personality type. Yeah, not like personality type as in a psychological personality type, but whether we are more like an outgoing, an extrovert, or you know, like externalized person, and whether we're more like a fighter, yeah, or whether we're more like a flighter, yeah, someone who avoids situation, or whether we just sort of numb or freeze or fawn. Yeah, this is something that I've mentioned a few times that you guys should be aware of, because this sets the stage for a lot of these emotional processing and emotional expression mechanisms in you. Yeah, so to just know this about yourself, yeah, whether you're fight, flight, or freeze person already helps. And then whether you are, you know, someone who has a tendency to open the floodgates and just vent it out, yeah, and you know, damage occurs in the process and you feel guilty afterwards, or whether you're someone who tries to keep the floodgates closed and suppresses it for as long as possible, and then perhaps experiences internal issues like you, Tina, like you described, You used to have that. You used to do that way, and that wasn't good either.
Yeah.
So these are the two extremes. What are some other experiences for you guys, except for those two examples?
I've noticed, well, just now, because I've also been in a bunch of things recently. And what I observed, one thing is in conversation, it seems like there must be, I guess it's just falling into programming and responding to the other person's position or needs or whatever
Okay.
happens to be discussing at that point. And this would, you know, be in a close relationship. It's not the checkout person at the store. Although that can happen, that there's like the rising of emotion or feeling goes, there's not really space for it maybe in a discussion to recognize it, and somehow like that emotion and the feeling blocks my, you know, rather than having a wide perspective for the discussion, suddenly I have this narrow perspective and my response is this, and this. And it's not till later that I think about it a little bit more and processed it through that I go, oh, okay, I can see their point a little bit more or something like that.
But
It's
that's
almost,
usually in hindsight, right? That's
oh
usually in
yeah, it's
hindsight.
like
Yeah.
going back and go, I'm sorry, you know, I didn't really respond with the best, you know, I'm getting much better. I mean, and I think I was pretty good compared to most people before. But there's so much dimension to be able to really listen to somebody and really care in a conversation that society, we really don't get a chance to experience. So this is what I'm noticing, and I step away, and with all the work we've been doing to really be able to nurture a relationship in a fair way, I guess. But in the conversation, it's almost like these emotions are there, but they're so vague. It's just kind of narrows the perspective of my response in the moment, which, you know,
The
isn't always good.
narrowing, Janet, often happens when things get triggered. Okay.
Yeah,
And
well, that's
when,
it. Yeah, it's obviously something that's brought up the emotion. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm something's not going my way or something.
well, or it creates an override in that situation. Like say,
There we go. Yep.
right, you're following the conversation, you're following, and you're an energetically sensitive person, you're an empath, you try to understand. This is, you just express that value. You want to be able to be present, you want to be able to listen, you want to be able to see things through the other person's eyes. You want that exchange. And again, yes, this is for more intimate situations, not like sexually or romantically, but anybody that you care for their emotions. Okay, that's what I hear you say.
Yeah.
Okay, and you want to be there and you want to respond appropriately, but there is something that you noticed that can make it really hard for you when you say narrow. What I hear is, you know, things get triggered and the range becomes smaller, all
Yeah.
the way to like black and white. Perhaps that would be the extreme. Yeah, but you know, like you have a hard time, and this is, listen carefully, Janet, not just you, everybody here, because this is you guys. Okay, there is a sign here for me, or there's something that I'm seeing in here that has to do with your empathy. Okay, you have conflicting values. You want to be emotionally present, yeah, and you want to know what the other person is feeling, but in the process your boundaries aren't so clear anymore. You lose the boundaries. You lose the feeling for what is yours and what is the other person's.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's kind of like an overwhelm that happens at that moment. And the overwhelm is then the trigger, where you no longer know what to react to. There's too many emotions. And because you don't know for sure whether this is yours or whether this is the other person's, okay, your reactions then become, let's say, erratic, or like you said, narrow, inappropriate perhaps, or, you know, you need to do something in order to regulate yourself, and this may be frustrating for the other. Okay, this is a really, really big subject here in the sacred self-healing community. It's called unmanaged empathy. Yes, it's a confusion. Unmanaged empathy is when, you know, there's not like actually floodgates. You have no gates. Okay, so someone who represses and keeps floodgates there, okay, has a control issue, needs to always keep those gates closed. But someone who has an unmanaged empathy, who has no gates there. Yes, Tina, you're right. She's commenting here in the chat. Becomes easily confused. Confused about, well, what am I actually feeling right now? Yeah, maybe I'm just absorbing. So a lot of you guys have absorption issues. Could I see some hand signs here? Who of you has noticed that as a problem? And you talk to other people, that you lose touch with what your feelings are, and that you have a tendency to get pulled into the other person's feelings, like as if they were yours. And then you become confused. You no longer know if this was yours or not. Yes. Yeah, this is the majority here.
I've been
Okay.
aware of this before. I mean, this is something I noticed many years ago with, you know, talking to people, both with what they're thinking and and trying not to absorb other people's thoughts too much. But I think emotion, I have more of a, because I really do. I feel like sometimes I'm like, did I just born with the emotions smackled all over my energetic field that I just can't grasp them and control them, sort of thing? And it's gotten better, but again, it's like, it is a bit what you're saying, but I think sometimes I can stand my ground, I guess is the best way to say it. But I think it is in a caring relationship, or maybe what happens is I want something more, or something like
Yes.
that
The
throws it off.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This typically happens with people that we care for. Now, with completely unmanaged empathy, yeah, and this is typically when people start looking for communities or coaches like me, where they just feel victim of other people's emotions or collective energies, okay? There is no distinction. You've learned quite a bit, Janet, since I first met you, and this is a long time ago. It's like 12, 13, 14 years ago, right? That's how long we've known each other. You know, the realization that, you know, not all of what you're feeling is actually yours, okay, helped you to make the first steps to differentiate. But energetic absorption happens just like how energetic projection happens as a normal a part of our human interaction. Yeah, so we covered this last time. It's really important to understand that we cannot really prevent that from happening. The only thing we can do, and this is the part here that I'm trying to teach you, is to know yourself so well that it's easier for you to differentiate. Yeah, that you can be in a situation with someone that you care for, and you suddenly get overwhelmed by a certain type of emotion, and you're like, wait, that's not mine. Those are not, this can actually happen with thoughts as well. We talked about this in the Mastering Your Thinking. This isn't my thought. This isn't my emotion. This is the other person's. And then we can learn the steps to sort this more. And you've kind of already identified what is needed, Janet. What is needed is to slow down. Yeah, we're going to talk about this here in the end. You know, the different steps that we can take in a situation to make it easier for us. But the simplest way to get out of our confusion, to understand our own emotions better, is to slow down time. Yeah, and obviously there's breathing techniques, but it can also be as simple as, and this is what many of us simply forget to do, is to ask for a timeout, is to say, hey, I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about this. Let me feel this through. Let me think this through. Let me come back to you. You know, and this can happen in a conversation. This doesn't have to mean that you don't talk to each other for 2 weeks. You know, this can happen when you start to become able to regulate yourself. You can do this within a conversation. And there are certain things that you can do. For example, asking questions or asking the other person to clarify. Also, one of those typical things that we forget to do. Yeah, if something becomes confusing to you, something becomes overwhelming to you, one of the easiest ways to counteract this is to say to the other, hang on, I'm not sure if I'm understanding this right. I'm not sure what I'm feeling about this. Could you help me understand better? Could you explain this to me? Or could you make me understand you? Yeah, instead of trying to fill in the gaps. That's the hallmark of unmanaged empathy, guys.
That's so helpful. It's
Yeah,
so good
we
because
fill in the
as
gaps.
you talk, I mean, it's again we forget. I mean, we who are becoming aware, just to sit in the wonder of how much is going on in especially in an intimate conversation with background and history and each other's wants and needs. There's energetically, there's so much happening, and of course we're trained to just kind of chick through a conversation and expect it to go a certain way, and I think that especially will set up big emotional triggers that get suppressed and
Yeah,
confusing.
see is chiming in here. She says, yeah, I often just say, aha, without, you know, actually really going into it or checking if this is, you know, how I want to react. You have kind of forgetting about your own expressions and then leave it as it is. I suppose, Siri, what you mean to say is that you allow it to get brushed over. Yeah, you just sort of take on the other person's standpoint or the other person's emotion. Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's the unexpected. Yeah, it's like where, you know, something happens, you know, where, you know, you don't really, yes, where you don't really, you know where the right balance is here between giving and receiving. So this is the unmanaged empathy, guys, is a big subject for most of you. Linda is sharing here in the chat, and guys, do me a favor, speak into the microphone, because reading is really hard for me while I'm talking. Linda is sharing mine is pretty much the same as Annette is. I stuff negative emotions, and you know, and you mentioned here in a side note that you've already learned through all these teachings here, these self-mastery teachings, you know, that this then ends up, you know, sort of being stuffed away. And yes, here, Linda, just real quick, the reminder, define negative emotions. Yeah, and oftentimes when we do that, we realize, oh, you know, it's not actually that simple. Janet, one more thing, also for Tina, though, or you know, most of you, those of you who have a tendency to trying to process your emotions mentally, what you are doing in that moment is allowing your mind to fill in the gaps.
Yes.
And that's a huge danger.
Yeah.
Because whatever your bias is, yeah, Janet, you said that, depending on what you expect from the conversation or the person, or how you invested in, or what you want to get out of it, yeah, and there can be a lot of different underlying and hidden biases, such as, you know, wanting to get validated, wanting to get approval from the other person, wanting to be loved, wanting to be liked. None of that are bad or negative, okay? But you're gonna have to be aware of what it actually is that is driving, you know, your view. And when you have underlying, say, childhood stuff, unresolved childhood stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with the person, or in your guys' case also sometimes karmic aspects. They have nothing to do with the person. They can override your reaction because something deep inside of you gets triggered. And we're going to talk about this here in a minute, how to identify those triggers and, you know, how to work with this. Yeah, and Annette, you say, in your case, you have another example here, trying to convince the other person that you're right, not giving any space. Yeah, that's the opposite of unmanaged empathy. Yeah, you insist on your view, and this is coherent with, you know, trying to control the floodgates, trying to be right or trying to convince the other. Yeah, is basically an effort to control how the situation goes. Yeah, unmanaged empathy is when you have zero control. You just let it all overrun you.
Jona, what I notice in myself is that my reaction depends on the person as well.
Yes.
If some people, I know I can talk, and if there are a lot of emotions popping up, I give myself time and I say, I will come back to that later. Don't talk to me right now. Then I check with myself, and when I know what was triggered, then I can say like, okay, that's what happened. Please don't do it again, or something like that. But with certain people, it's they are not open. They refuse any kind of, you know, conversation or even mentioning. So my tendency is to withdraw myself from that person. It's just like cutting off the person, trying not to be around these people if I can.
Yeah, I mean, that's not unhealthy, Aneta.
But my emotions are still there. I am like volcano.
You're like a volcano, okay. So
Yeah,
you still have to
like,
deal
okay, holding that to blow up, you know, okay.
Okay.
So it's not that.
That's understandable. That's part of regulating. Okay. And when it comes to regulating, you're going to have to then, and this is a higher function, obviously, you have to ask yourself, why is this so important to you? Is this even important to you? Yeah. And then you can let go of that. Yeah. Let's say, and I've produced a few videos where I talked about this. If you are with a person who clearly doesn't share the same values than you, you know, who has different values. Let's say, I mean, I know that you're a yoga teacher, that you're an energy healer. You know, let's say you're talking to someone who thinks that, you know, yoga and energy and blah, 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 is all a bunch of BS, right? Let's just take that extreme. Does it make sense of trying to convince that person?
Oh, no. If it's someone who does not share the same values, it's easy for me to cut, and I am not volcano. It's more like with a family member, which I need to be present in their company because it's a family member. So at least once a year, twice a year. And this person is always triggering, so I can limit, you know, how often I see that person, but I cannot cut that person totally.
So there, a lot of people have issues with that, and this is why I brought up the other extreme. The other extreme is like, and this is how you learn to regulate. Yeah, you just have to kind of classify it for yourself. Here, you know, the example that I made is an example of someone where, in the end, you don't really care, right? You just you let it go because you realize it makes no sense, and you know, you're just not engaging in a conversation, or you know, like don't need to face that person. You don't need to go there. Or you can be with them, but you just don't go into certain spaces with them because you know that your values are completely opposite. Yeah, this happens a lot with religious and political discussions. Okay, if you know somebody's values or views, and you know that they're you know, opposing yours, and you're not really interested in, or the person is not really interested in a sort of a neutral discussion, then it's best to not go there. That's a step toward regulation. You're regulating yourself because you realize it's a waste of energy. But what if the person has a meaning to you? Or what if the person, and this is not just family, this is also in work environments the case, fulfills a function, or you fulfill a function. Yeah. Then you have to investigate the function. Okay. So let's give us an example. Give us an example, Aneta.
Yeah.
The family member that you have in mind, is this someone that you have to interact with all the time, or is this someone whom you just see, like I say, at Thanksgiving dinners or
It's a good question. It's actually my mother-in-law.
Okay, and mother-in-laws is a whole category for itself. Okay,
and I think
that's
it
a
might
good
be
one.
karmic. That's what I got the feeling, because it's totally different than my own mother, with the values, with the way of looking at the world. It's so different that you cannot find two different females in the whole world.
Okay, so you've already established that. You already understand that your mother-in-law has completely different and probably also cultural values and maybe even religious values. In multinational marriages, you have that a lot. Yeah, it's the difference that you notice. Yeah, it's not just because they're thinking differently or they have different values in life. It's also because they were raised differently.
That's
right?
true. Mm-hmm.
So you already established that. And mother-in-law is obviously tricky for most people because mother-in-law is always the mother of the partner of the man, because that partner was raised by that mother, right? Which means a part of that mother is in the partner. Okay, that just needs to be seen as is. That's just logic. Okay, even if, let's say, our partner has already discovered the limitations or shortcomings of their own mother, it still has influenced their upbringing, our partner's upbringing. Now you have to differentiate, Aneta, and this is with mother-in-laws. Is it actually what your mother-in-law says, or is it the effect that what your mother-in-law says on your husband that triggers you? Or your relationship with your husband, like the relationship.
I would say it's more complicated because I am very straightforward. My husband is straightforward. My mother-in-law is, you don't know her face at all. It's more like she says something to someone else, then comes back to me, but it's not between me and my husband or interaction between them. It's more me and the other people around, and it's what she says, how she behaves. That's basically, I don't even know how to describe it. I feel like it's all around me.
Okay, but that's why we're talking about it, right? It's a wonderful example. So let me just ask you a few questions to help you out with this, and then we're going to go into the more theoretical part. But this is a really good example. Okay, so when I asked if it's what your mother-in-law does or says directly, or the way it affects you or your relationship with your husband, okay, then you said that both of you are straightforward, which means with another you don't have a problem, with another you have clear values, but somehow when your mother-in-law comes into the game, something gets disrupted there. Okay, you said you brought in other people, I suppose, other family members. Is that what you're talking about? Other families, how other family members see what you're doing or what you and your husband are doing? How can your mother-in-law affect other people
She
in your
talks
life?
about me, and it's a kind of like not straightforward, because other people are taking me for a ride later on, checking who I am, and they're like, wow, you are not difficult at all. So it's kind of, I can hear that there was some talk behind me about me as a person, and I think that it's more of the inclusion. I am not a part of the family.
All right. Okay. What you need to investigate is why your mother-in-law has that much power over other people. What are these other people? Other family members?
Yeah.
Other family members. Okay. And what would be a typical situation where that comes out, like at family gatherings, or?
It's usually, but it's a kind of in a subtle way, because I am not a very rough person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of building up through years. It hasn't been that way because I came with the open heart.
Mm-hmm.
And a few things which I noticed, I started closing my heart because I know it was not healthy for me. And I think that nowadays it's kind of it's tricky. I am really preparing myself mentally and emotionally to see her for like a few days before.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear you say is that your mother-in-law is not trustworthy for you.
No.
Emotionally.
Oh no.
Okay. For whatever the reason. I mean, you said she talks behind your back, she manipulates other people that have that are in your life as well. Yeah. And so you can't trust her. Yeah. She will. You said something about you never know her face. I suppose what you mean is that she never really outs herself. She never really takes a stand for anything. She just sort of plays nice in front of you, and then sort of backstabs you through other people. There's multiple ways you can deal with that. Okay, first of all, you could just not give a shit about what other people think. Okay, knowing, yeah, what your mother-in-law, what the picture is that she paints of you. But here is exactly the trigger. You do care about what other people think of you.
You know what? Yes and no. I more care like, why does she do that? So I think that my emotions are not towards the other people because I know who I am. So it's a triggering, and it kind of always bothers me. Like, what's the purpose for that behind that? Because I don't understand. Again, it's not in my world, you know.
Okay. So here is where two of the previous examples come together. Instead of focusing on how to manage your own emotions about this and take a stance for yourself, a big part of your energy goes into trying to figure out why she does it. Yeah, this is a hallmark of codependency, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, to be more concerned about what the other person thinks or does or feels than what you feel or think. Okay. And this happens unconsciously. There's a blind spot that we all have. Okay. And in the process, because this is her MO, right? Her methodology is to never show you what she truly feels and thinks. With that,
you are spot on. Wow.
Yes, it keeps you guessing. It keeps you guessing, and you try to mentally and intellectually understand this and start filling in the gaps. And right there is where you get triggered. Because what do you think, Aneta, your mind is going to fill those gaps with?
All the negative thoughts.
All your fears. Yes. All the fears. Oh, they don't love me. Oh, they exclude me. Oh, they were so mean to me. Why are they doing this to me? I didn't do anything to them. Maybe I need to be nicer to them. Maybe I need to try harder. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you tried hard in the beginning. Hopefully you're not trying that hard anymore. Because typically there's no solution to this. Yeah, the only solution to this is to realize that you're part of a dysfunctional constellation, okay, and that you need to minimize, exposure, yeah, and really work on your mind to not fill in the gaps. Actually, and this is a bit of a shortcut here because we're just about to like investigate this a little more and then come to solution steps. But actually, really what you need to do, yeah, and this works 100% of the time. And guys, all of you empaths out there, remember this. When people play double face, with you. Double face, you guys all understand this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So play nice in the front and stab you in the back. Always ask them dumb questions. Oh, how do you mean that? Oh, I'm not sure if I'm understanding this right. Could you explain that to me? Oh, why are you saying that? Is that because you want me to feel in a certain way? This isn't the same as playing the game. This is calling somebody else out.
Okay.
I have that problem with my mother, not my mother-in-law. I
Okay.
have that problem with my mother. And, you know, my mother will do things. Guys, I hope you don't mind me sharing and giving myself here as an example. My mother does things where she calls me at 7 a.m. in the morning. Mind you, she lives in Europe. So, you know, for her, it's like 1 p.m. And to tell me that I'm a bad mom. Okay, I haven't seen my mom in 5 years, and I've lived on the same continent with her for 25 years. And within those 25 years, I've seen her twice. Okay, so my mother calls me at 7 a.m. in the morning to tell me that I'm a bad mom. I have a 6-month-old infant in my arm, yeah, and 2 school-age children that need to go to school. And I'm like, oh, well, that's nice to call me at 7 a.m. in the morning when I'm actually trying my best to be a good mom. That was my response. And you're calling me to tell me that I'm a bad mom? Pause. And I'm saying, I really need to focus on being a good mom right now. If the only reason why you're calling me to make me feel bad about being a mom, then I don't want to have that conversation right now. And then she hung up. Okay. Can you feel that? I immediately called it out. And that requires a lot of practice. Because I need to know what I'm feeling. I need to know who I am. I need to know what she does. And I need to know what to say to cut it off. That requires a lot of practice.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Kiana.
Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, like, and the reason why I gave you this information, we haven't only seen each other 3 times in that amount of time. And, you know, basically, you know, this is literally what I said to myself in that moment. Instead of trying to figure out why she does this, I don't care why she does this. It's inappropriate. It's not okay. And it's unfounded, and it's like vile. It's not okay, no matter how I twist or turn it, no matter whether it's my mom or anybody else. It's just not okay. It's a boundary I have, period. I don't care. If somebody calls me at 7 a.m. in the morning with 3 kids, trying to get them ready and trying to deal with stuff, some of you may know what that's like in the morning, okay, then yes, you're right, Syria. She blames herself. This is obviously stuff that she's going through herself for being a bad mom. You're absolutely right. But why should I put this into consideration in that moment? Tell me. Why should I guess about why she's doing that? I can explain it.
It seems like, you know, I think we slip into, especially all of us nicey empathy people are like, I want to have this family, like deep in your heart, you're like, I want this experience. And the question starts to rise, I think, kind of like, why can't this person just help me have this experience of this perfect family, or everybody getting along, or something like that? That's what it seems. I mean, I've had to chip away my mom's way of her arrows coming at me as well. I mean, they're so secret.
But right here, you just said it, Janet. Right here is the mistake. Why can't this person just help me too? Why do you bother about that question? Because they're obviously not. Now, sometimes, you know, they are maybe, but it doesn't come out right. Then it's worth it maybe to go into and say, hey, you know, like, I'm not sure if this is what you want to express right now, but what this makes me feel like is crappy. Okay, so if there was something that you wanted to discuss with me, like Siri, you said, oh yeah, it's probably, you know, her processing, you know, her being a bad mom or feeling guilt. Sure, but if that's what she wants to express, if that's what she wants to process with me, okay, she's got to find a better way. She's got to find a higher expression. Yeah, because calling me and literally saying to me, and what a crappy mom you are, and I just wanted you to know, and I thought about it yesterday, and da, da, da. You start a conversation like that, sorry, that is not preempting a fruitful exchange of, you know, understanding and empathy. So you're going to also have to put into account how the other person approaches it. Your guys' big problem is that you're trying to explain it and trying to excuse it, how other people react. And you lose your own values in the process. No, it's not okay. And I can give you hundreds of examples where it doesn't matter who says it. And especially if it comes to people who have an emotional tie to you, or you have an emotional tie to you, you need to be strict. Even with children. There are certain things that need to come to expression. There are certain things that need to be discussed. And yes, they're certainly uncomfortable. But emotional regulation has to do with finding ways that work. And not just finding ways to vent. Venting is an extremely brutal projection of energies. And sometimes it can help if it's the exception. And if you have enough, say, you know, self-awareness, yeah, like Janet, I think you mentioned this earlier, to come back and say, hey, wait, let me self-correct. The way this came out wasn't right. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Let me say this differently. Here's what I really meant to say. If you can do this, and yes, Linda, you're correct. It's good to have scripts for those kind of situations. And that's, by the way, something that we teach at the Love Integrity course that Jeff and I do. These interpersonal relationship aspects, especially for empaths, how to wiggle yourself through, you know, these tricky situations with people that you love. It needs to be practiced. But a big distractor that you guys have as empaths, and that's a specific problem, is that you spend more energy into trying to figure out why other people do things. Because, Aneta, you said it beautifully, it's just not part of your world. You just don't have that on your radar. You would never do that. You would never make another person feel that way. And that's where things clash in you, and it kind of, you know, disrupts your entire integrity. And I sometimes, and this is maybe a little bit extreme as an example, but I sometimes give this example, you know, that what this looks like to me energetically. When you try to understand a serial killer, the only way to understand the serial killer, do you know what that is?
To become one?
Well, okay, you don't have to act out on it, but you certainly have to start thinking and feeling like one to understand. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then if you get paid for it, if that's your job, and that too is a kind of like a karmic thing that needs to be investigated. But if that's your job, okay, all right, fine. Yeah, and hopefully you've been taught methodologies that help you to dissociate a little bit. But it's not healthy, really. It's not healthy for a person with empathy to try to understand a person with no empathy. And if this is all you remember, guys, that's half of your critical situations in life. Stop trying to understand other people, especially if they do not show up. This relates to their expression, to how they show up, with the willingness to see things from your perspective, because that's what empathy is. Do some people have little practice in empathy and expression? Yes. And with those, it's worth it. But you do have to ask yourself if you're okay to go all the way back to kindergarten when it comes to emotional literacy. Are there people that have distorted empathy? They don't do this on purpose. They're just, you know, they have some kind of mental illness or mental distortion or just delusion. Yes, quite a few. Anybody with a personality disorder, yeah, and psychopathy, so a serial killer, a narcissist, a borderline, you will not be able to come to a common denominator. And that is where education comes in. You have to be able to identify that. You have to understand what the person's abilities and limitations are. And the simple thing is, you know, to test a person's ability for empathy. All you really got to do is ask them if they're willing for 5 minutes to listen to you and walk in your shoes and see things from your perspective. And right there in the response, and this is a feeling thing, guys, you will see if that person is generally able to feel empathy or not. Do you guys know what I mean? If a person has no empathy, it doesn't make the person a bad person, you know. But humans typically have empathy, some more, some less. You guys have too much. Okay. Yeah, but there are people who really don't. And this is the problem with the narcissist. It's the problem with the narcissism in your life. Okay. Because you simply don't want to accept that some people don't have empathy. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to finish that sentence. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, yeah, sorry to interrupt. I feel like I'm resonating so much with what you were just saying towards the end there about someone that doesn't have empathy, and we just want to show them that it's possible to actually treat people better or to listen or to put themselves in other people's shoes, and we just can't relate when they just can't do that. And you almost want to try and help them to see themselves. And I think that it's just, you don't want to give up on helping them see where they're going wrong maybe, and how they could make their lives and other people around them so much better if they just could see what they're doing. I mean, is that not maybe right to some degree, why, you know, people that are really sensitive just don't want to give up on someone who, when you can kind of see, you can just keep seeing what they keep doing, and you almost feel like it's your duty to go, hey, and just sort of almost sit them down and go, well, no one's ever done this for them, but I need to say this lovingly.
Yeah, this is the typical empath confusion. Okay. Okay. It's actually quite egotistical. Okay, yeah. Because really, you know, you say, oh, you know, nobody's ever done this for them, you know, and nobody's ever, well, I don't know, when people are like 30, 40 years old, okay, they've already gotten, you know, already had their share of experiences. Okay, if they have, you know, if somebody doesn't have empathy, or if it's, you know, limited or distorted for whatever reason. And there's other reasons than psychopathy or narcissism. There's also addiction, yeah, a big one, that can limit a person's empathy. Then they must have experienced, you know, all these relationship issues before.
But the thing is, like, if they've been through a lifetime of trauma and they've disconnected from themselves as a coping mechanism and they've become almost numb, I feel it in myself in the opposite. But you can see, if you can see this in somebody, whether it's a parent or a loved one or your partner, whatever it is, you see that part of them that they're not seeing, that they can just almost connect, like plug themselves back in again. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to explain myself.
No, we all understand what you're saying, Mandy, because this is a typical empath thing. Okay, but that's exactly what gets you into trouble. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
So, seeing the light and seeing the good in everybody is a wonderful notion. It's a great value. Okay, but if you're dealing with someone who, for whatever reason, for example, has issues with trauma that is unresolved, okay, then you need to stay away from it. Why? Because it's going to hurt you. Okay, if you're a therapist, or if you're a counselor, a psychologist, psychotherapist, or coach, then people can pay you to help them with that. But if you are in a relationship with someone who shows those, yeah, and I'm showing this here, you won't be able to read it all. You'll get this with the slides, with the recording, you know, energetic and psychosomatic symptoms of trauma, or, you know, carries a high trauma load, yeah, then you need to protect yourself, because that will be one of the causes for the person not being able to emotionally regulate or bring up the needed empathy to deal with emotional issues. So in other words, it's like when you're talking to someone, okay, about, I don't know, like how a car works, to fix a car. Yeah, let's say you have a mechanical issue, and you're trying to explain to a person who knows nothing about it. You want that person to fix the car, and the person doesn't know anything about cars, and you saying, oh, nobody ever just nobody taught them, so I should put all my energy into teaching them how to fix a car so that they can fix the car for me.
Because you love them, you don't want to turn your back on them. You don't want to walk away and give up on them.
This is not the same as giving up on somebody. This is about seeing their limitations and being realistic about it. And then you need to ask yourself the question, why do you want to have a relationship with someone who clearly cannot bring in the minimum of what you need?
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you all into fixing cars and improving cars, and you know, like if this is your thing, you know, and you fall in love with someone who doesn't know anything and doesn't care about cars, in fact destroys cars unknowingly, just out of dumbness, okay, at some point you're going to have to ask yourself, do I really want to have a relationship with this person? Of course, nobody ever taught them how to fix a car. This is, yeah, sure, but it's also because they're maybe not interested in cars. Maybe that's a reality. Maybe they just don't want, you know, what you want. And that's why I called it egotistical. Maybe they say they want it, but they're overestimating their skill level.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right, and I don't want to sound harsh here, maybe their trauma load is too big. And when somebody's trauma load or addiction or, you know, mental illness is so strong that it dominates relationships, then a person needs to seek help. Okay? It's not something that you, as someone who is having an emotional tie with that person, can resolve. It'd be extremely unhealthy for you. And the reason why I'm sort of labeling this as a typical empath problem is that new age notion that you should not give up on people. This is complete bullshit, Mandy. You got to get that out of your head. If you keep getting hurt, and this is for all of you, but trying to make a relationship work with someone, then there is the self-protective mechanism in you that should tell you, why should I go back to a person that keeps hurting my feelings? Isn't working. And that is actually indicating trauma load in you. Yeah, because when we go back to people who keep hurting our feelings, and Annetta, this could be your example as well. Yeah, and trying to make them understand, trying to make our true self, trying to convince them, trying to, I don't know what, lift them up so that they can be good enough for us to actually have a good relationship with them. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Why?
Just the ego, I guess.
Yeah. Why not realizing that, yes, okay, we can sometimes fall in love with people who don't bring in the prerequisites or the needs or the values, yeah, that we have. And yes, that's rough, but staying with them or keep going back to them shows that there's something wrong with us. Not wrong as in flawed, but there's something that isn't computing.
Okay.
because our emotional pain is there to teach us something. We just went through this here in the codependency workshop that we had the last 4 days. Really, really intense, eye-opening and revealing. We got to understand that this attitude that you represented here, Mandy, not you as a person. This is a whole, sort of notion of sort of energetically sensitive people. That we should not give up on people, and that we should try to help them, and we should bring them the light, and we should show them the truth, and we should help them heal, is extremely unhealthy if it's not reciprocal. It comes from our need to get from them what we cannot get ourselves. We're basically fighting for somebody else's well-being there, as instead of fighting for our own. It's like our pet projects. It's what we call the unhealed healer. Instead of putting this energy into us, healing our emotions, finding better expressions for ourselves, better behaviors, better coping behaviors, we take on these pet project people that we fall in love with or think we're in love with, that have so much more trauma than we do, right? Because we feel for them, right? We feel so sorry for them, right? And fight for them. Oftentimes, they don't even want us to do that for them. But we do not want to give up on them. And why do we not want to give up on them? Because that reminds us of what happened to us. Because our trauma is haven't been given up on.
Wow.
And we don't want anybody else to feel that, because it reminds us of our deep core fear. And that's why we go above and beyond for other people, disregarding and damaging ourselves.
How do you recover from that?
Yeah, well, welcome to the club. That's what self-healing is about.
Mm-hmm.
And what helps to see those things is the energetic perspective. So you can obviously do a little bit of therapy, which helps with the psychological aspects of it. But there is much more to that.
Yeah, for me, talk therapy is an absolute waste of time and money. Like, it's the energetic drainage that I feel like shattered all the time, just absolutely depleted.
Yeah, and this is something that we also found out here in the codependency intensive just right now is, well, we say it's a waste of energy. We say it's a waste of time and money. I need you guys to see how much money, how much energy you spend on trying to cope with your coping.
But I think talk therapy only does so much. And like, if you sat with something for so long within yourself, like you said earlier, you're just avoiding yourself, and you don't want to feel into what you need to work on, and you find these pet projects and stuff in other people or whatever.
Yeah, it's a distraction. So talk therapy helps great time, because especially if it's a professional, because it's all about you. It's undivided attention on you. Okay, and that's something that feels uncomfortable. Yeah, because we're not used to that. Yeah, it helps big time. But there's holistic stuff to that. It's very complex. Yeah, that's why I showed these charts. And just so you guys know, there is, I don't know, 20, 30 videos out there in the Sacred Self-Healing community about this: emotional processing, addictions, empathy, regulating empathy, all this kind of stuff. So this is really the subject of the Sacred Self-Healing community. Yeah, how to heal from these things. So let's move on and establish a few things here so that we can get used to some of the terms that are needed, to learn. And that has to do, obviously, when we're afraid of big emotions, we're afraid of the floodgates opening, we're afraid of our unmanaged empathy, we're afraid of inappropriate reactions or inappropriate timing. We are afraid of the numbness and the guilt and the shame that comes. So this is why we have a problem with big emotions, right? So let's investigate this and how far this actually links back to us being emotionally dysregulated. And once we know, that this is our issue, then we can actually develop a strategy to work with this. Okay, so sacred self-healing is all about developing strategies, but seeing it from a larger perspective. So let's go through a typical psychological test here. So those are 12 quiz questions that determine how emotionally regulated you are. And if you experience these symptoms here on a regular basis, then it indicates that you are emotionally dysregulated. Okay, and let's see how strong that is in you. So please go with me here and raise your hand. Are you guys all familiar with the raise your hand button, how to push that? Can you see that on your control panel?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, so raise your hand when I read the question, and then raise your hand if you think this applies to you, all of you, okay?
Keep my hand up.
Okay, so do you have a tendency to space out at odd times? Do you have difficulty paying attention when it's important or remembering important things? Raise your hand. Whoops, mute your microphone real quick because there's a lot of other noises there. Raise your hand if this applies to you, spacing out at odd times. Almost like it's often also called a freeze, like you don't even know what you're thinking, like you're just like in nowhere land. Okay. Question number 2, and take note of how many yeses you said. When you're speaking, do you sometimes lose your words or have trouble completing sentences? Next question. Do you ever forget where you are? For example, when you're driving, do you ever get lost in a familiar place or struggle to remember familiar routes? Or I could add, wonder how you got there. This links into the spacing out, right? There's a sort of it's a sign that there's some kind of autopilot going on in you. Question number 4. Do you often feel scattered, trying to do a lot of things at once and finishing nothing? Do you get clumsy at random times, tripping over things or dropping things, slipping, running against door frames, those kind of things? Yeah. That indicates, by the way, that you're not fully present, you're not fully in your body. When you're trying to do something familiar, especially when you are hurrying or under pressure, do you sometimes get too flustered to function? It's a situation when you have to be on time for an appointment and you have to rush out the door, and and it just sort of kind of wipes you out. When you're annoyed or angry with someone, do you ever feel a huge urgency to express your feelings, even when you know your emotional intensity is likely to cause things to get worse? You really, really want to get something out, and you kind of don't care anymore what the other person feels. Sense of urgency. Has your anger caused problems in your life? For example, ruining relationships, creating danger, or getting you in trouble with the law? Do romantic
danger if you're driving.
Yeah, when you're in traffic, that's a good example. But also like just dangerous situations, like things where you get pulled into stuff that you didn't even realize were going on, stuff like that, where sort of your normal boundaries kind of set out. That's what the question is. Okay. Do romantic or sexual situations sometimes shut you down? Do you have trouble setting boundaries or saying no? Do you ever put yourself in danger?
Jona, can I ask something about
Please.
this 9?
Please.
If you don't have these romantic situations because you have avoided it, is it a yes here?
Yeah, I would say so, because you shut it down so much that it's no longer there. you know, I mean, but there's a shutdown, you know, it's shutting you down. So your way of dealing with being shut down is to avoid it altogether. Yeah, so that could be one of the consequences.
Yeah, okay.
You know, yeah, and then the question here also leads into like, do you have trouble setting boundaries or saying no? Yeah, that helps you to investigate why you're shutting it down. Yeah, maybe you don't want to say no, and so you shut it down from in the first place.
Yeah, or I say no too much.
Well, right. I mean, that always comes out of the fear of not wanting to be in a situation where you have to say no.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so no to everything. If you say no to everything, you don't need to worry about that, right?
No.
But it's a good question, Annette. It's a good question.
Okay.
Number 10. After a big emotional upset, do you sometimes feel nothing? Like sort of numb?
This one, Jona, I noticed recently, I felt like, and now all of a sudden while I'm telling you this, I'm having a flashback of another instance when I was younger. I was like, oh wow, I handled that well, because I just feel like I'm in bliss. Like after these 2 times of just like going, oh my gosh, and then having to go about my day, I was like, oh, I really took it as, oh, I feel good. I've got a nice clear day. I feel good. I think maybe this might be hinting to the fact that I might be not really recognizing or suppressing my responses.
Yeah, it's called dissociation.
I mean, I'm like, it was like happy bliss, but I have to admit that I have to consider the fact that it might be feeling nothing, and it was like a drug.
Yes, you're onto something here. It's not
Okay.
happy bliss. What you are describing is relief. It's relief. Okay. And it is an addictive pattern.
Yeah, because
all
it
you want
relates
is
to
to get rid of it. You want to
yeah.
get rid of
Sorry.
the emotion.
It's relating to when I was, because I mean, I'll tell everybody here, I went through an eating disorder, and right as soon as I started talking to you, it reminded me of the same euphoria. Interesting. Okay, interesting.
Yes, you would
Laughing at,
just want to get it out. You just want to get rid of it. Okay. But you're not really connecting with it in the process. That's just like a cutting yourself off. An eating disorder, you know, especially bulimia, is a very good example, because you know you just don't want to live with the consequences. Just cut it off.
precisely.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Go ahead. There was a question here. Mandy, was that you? Somebody?
Oh, sorry, it might have just been me. I missed what you were saying about it being an addiction. You said that you're onto something here, but I lost the words. But it's all good. Don't worry. Thanks.
Yeah. So it's the relief. Okay. This is important what Janet said. She thought she felt bliss. No, really all you felt was the relief from not having to feel the pain anymore. And this can, you know, neurotransmitter wise feel like bliss, because if we're in a continual state of pain, in a continual state of trauma, then venting can actually feel like bliss for 5 seconds. It doesn't resolve the thing though. Yeah, it's not actually processing anything or expressing anything. It's just venting. And venting is what typically destroys relationships. Yeah, because it makes us, or you know, whomever it concerns, whoever vents, untrustworthy. Because if you just vent out of nowhere, okay, impossible to comprehend for the other person. You feel good afterwards, and they feel like a pile of shit because of what you just said. Okay, you got a relationship issue there. Yeah, but you're not feeling it. You're cutting yourself off from it, because in that moment you feel so elated. Oh, I finally got it out. This is healthy for me. Haha. Yeah, they always say I need to express my feelings. No, this is venting or bursting out in inappropriate situations. And some people, just so you know, some people volunteer this, they facilitate this, they escalate on purpose so that they can have a big emotional release, so that they can feel good for 5 minutes. And you sit there. Anybody ever been in that situation? And feel like, what the heck just happened? And obviously, and some of you reported that this person often feels bad afterwards, feels guilt-ridden. So there comes the pain again. Yeah, comes back to you and apologizes. No, okay. And yes, of course, you don't want to let them down. You understand. You have all, all the big stories and why and childhood trauma and blah blah blah. And you're like, oh yeah, it's okay. No, it's not okay. But you have to understand that when it's you who's doing that there's an addictive component to that. Yeah, and that is that no different from drinking alcohol or taking drugs, that you're dominated by the need to get rid of those emotions. It indicates an unwillingness to actually process the emotions. Yeah, so letting go, processing, is not the same as venting. Very important. Question 11.
I would also, sorry,
Yeah.
Number 10, I would also say that after a big emotional upset and feeling nothing, that can be a bit scary too. It can feel scary at the same time.
Yeah.
If you're aware that you're not feeling anything and what the heck is going on?
Yeah. Yes. And it can make the other person really, really scared too.
Yeah.
Because it feels cold.
Yeah.
It's cold. You've cut yourself completely off from your heart.
Yes.
Number 11. Does your face go blank or your voice go flat when you feel upset? Okay, so this is your way of trying to regulate. It's a pre-step to dissociating. You're trying to not show what you're feeling, and you think, and it does work to a degree, but you think that by not showing how upset you are, that you can stay in control. Truth is, it makes it very hard to understand someone who goes blank.
I am laughing so hard because it's like calling on a little child right now, going, okay, I see what you're doing, and I'm laughing so hard at that. I can see you. You're upset.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. I mean, the trick here, or the antidote to this, is to actually say, I am really upset right now, and to leave it at that, but to at least indicate it. I have an anecdote to share with you here, and this is when I first became aware of it. My first husband was extremely dramatic, alcoholic, and the childhood trauma, blah blah blah. Don't matter, all his stuff. Okay, and there was a constant emotional drama, constantly. So I learned to go really blank, to not further escalate the drama, because there was always big emotions. There was never like anything normal, sort of manageable. There was always like these extremes. Right? And one day I realized, wait, he does not hear me. If my feelings are heard and I just go blank, he doesn't hear me. And then I watched his interaction with his mom, and his mom was extremely dramatic. And yeah, if you're asking me from today's perspective, used a lot of emotional manipulation on him. Yeah, so even though he was convinced that he's not going to do this or this or this for his mom, one conversation with her made him do it. And that's because she just overran her with her emotions, obviously with the mommy powers that she has, that all mothers have. Yeah, speaking of mother-in-laws. And he would just like go and do it. And then I thought, oh my God, this is how he works. He needs that big emotional reaction to understand me. Anybody ever been in that place? So I started, in order to better cope with this, I started to create artificial drama for my husband, so just so that he could hear me. He would not hear me if I would talk in a normal, sort of neutral way. For him, that meant there's not anything that he needs to react to. He would only react if I created a lot of drama. This actually, I had a laugh. This was toward the end of the marriage where I realized, oh my God, here I am trying to make myself become a different person just so that my husband can hear me, just so that it's easier for my husband to understand my emotions. Yeah. So you have to understand the dysregulation here. Yeah. So me trying to become different just so that he can understand me better is a sign of dysregulation. But this was the original. This is where I came from. Do you ever notice that you can't fully feel parts of your body, your hands, mouth, face, nose, or feet? Yeah, and this is something that, indicates, these psychosomatic traces in you, yeah, the problems that are underlying your reactions, your coping mechanisms. There are disconnections there between your body, your emotions, and your thoughts. And as we've learned here, for energetically sensitives and spiritually oriented people, also a disconnection with spiritual values. It's a big mumbo jumbo.
I thought it
And
was like a superpower not to feel it sometimes. And I think that's why I've got myself in so many physical disasters. I was like, oh, look, I don't feel have things.
yeah. And we are, unfortunately, Jona, it's cool that you can laugh about this. We are trained, we're conditioned to do that because our society tells us that it's better to shut your mouth.
Yeah,
Okay.
that I have recognized, but I think I've started to like, what's the word? Justify it or something at one point, because it obviously hasn't been resolved fully.
Yeah, so the justifications, the excuses, they are then the ones that do damage in us. They create the narrative. This is then where we start deceiving ourselves. Yeah, so that's the problem. That's why it's all connected. Body, mind, emotion. And when you're dealing with trauma or when you're dealing with emotional hurt, then these three are merged together. And this is basically the number one tip that I have for all of you is to detangle them. Yeah, that's why when people come to me for the energy course, the energy wellness, and any kind of energy coaching, I always start out with helping them discern their sensing, yeah, through their five senses, the connection with their body, their emoting, yeah, what the emotions are that they're, and their thinking, what their thoughts are. Okay, and once you can do that, then you can start. You can also then investigate your spiritual values that play into this, and if you further progress, you can also investigate the energetic quality of your emotions and your states. So this is then sort of the higher level of self-healing, is when you recognize what state you are in and then learn the mechanisms how to shift yourself out of your state. But just so you guys understand here with this quiz and these questions, when I started out my self-healing journey, which was very early, because as many of you know, I started out with a quite traumatic childhood. I was suicidal, tried to commit suicide twice by the age of 14. Okay, so by 14, I was ready to give up, and it wasn't that, let's say, it was too harsh of circumstances. It was a complete and utter disconnect that I experienced from early childhood on for various reasons. Each and every of these questions applied to me. Each and every one of them. How many yeses do you guys have? How many of these questions did you answer with yes? 4 or 5?
What do I hear?
No, I asked how many of those questions you've answered with yes.
I
Janet.
had I noticed that a lot of them I happily have my radio's playing.
We hear you.
I have gone past because I can recognize some of them and happily can say, I almost raised my hand, was like, but I don't do that anymore. So it was really good to see that, oh, I don't do that anymore, because I almost convinced myself that I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice. That's what, when you, and this is a good sort of feedback with yourself too, you know, like, oh yeah, these things, I used to do these things, and I recognize now how they got me into trouble, or how they led to me becoming even more dysregulated emotionally, or how they indicated my dysregulation. Yeah, so half or more than half, guys, that's really quote unquote normal. Okay, and for energetically sensitive and empathic people, you know, any number really is, I would say, considered to be common, because there's a reason why we develop our empathy, and this has to do with trauma. Yeah, because oftentimes empathy is the only coping mechanism, or energy reading, let me say. Not every energetically sensitive or good energy reader is empathic, okay, but energy reading itself develops out of a necessity, namely when the circumstances that we are in do not allow, say, verbal or physical exchange of emotions, yeah, in a healthy way. Then we have to resort to these energetic abilities that we have. And yes, it is to a degree, even though you meant this in a different way, Janet, but it is a superpower to be able to read other people's emotions. But what happens in the process is that we lose touch, we lose the you know, like the connection to our own emotions. If this empathy had to develop in the course of you know, just surviving life, yeah, and that's then what needs to be reclaimed. So the self-healing journey, and then self-mastery as the higher level of self-healing, all right, must include, you know, you becoming more aware of your own sensations, emotions, and thoughts, then how you frame all of this, which is the spiritual component, and then obviously the energetic quality of where you're at. So please understand that you identifying, you know, high levels of emotional regulation in you does not mean that you are screwed or flawed or anything like that. All it really shows you is that whatever you think you're doing well may be part of your blind spot, maybe something that needs to be worked with. Okay, and here, just as a reminder, this is something we talked about in the last workshop with managing your emotions, is unmanaged or unprocessed emotions create avoidance and unconscious compulsions. Yeah, so ego mechanisms to cope with these unwanted emotions. Underneath all compulsions is the resistance to that unwanted emotional state. So the trick is really, when you energetically sensitive, is to feel into what it actually is that you don't want to feel. Can you hear me? This is tricky, because first you're going to have to be able to, you know, sort of get into a space with yourself where you can handle, you don't need to control, but where you can handle your emotions, and then go into and ask yourself, wait, what am I actually feeling? Where am I feeling this in my body? Really important question. Any kind of trauma therapy always has a somatic therapy attached to it. This is why so many of you do well with yoga or massage or any of the other body work modalities, because it reconnects you with your body. Underneath all addictions and addictive patterns is a strong ego drive to avoid a certain emotional state, or to cope with an unmet need. And the unmet needs, we don't have the time to go through this. There's plenty of workshops in your Sacred Self-Healing Forum that you can look at, you know, because when it comes to, you know, really understanding the energetic quality, yeah, so we basically have two different states that we can experience, and that is conflict or peace. Yeah, the prerequisite for happiness, fulfillment, and you know, good relationships, yeah, any kind of sort of positive experience in life is a certain level of inner peace. Okay, like being in peace with yourself, not necessarily sort of the Buddhic peace or the bliss peace, but at least not having large schisms or conflicts in you. And that's why I came up with this gauge here. You know, this helps you to kind of in retrospect, identify what you're actually dealing with by measuring the level of confliction that you have. So the more conflicted you are internally, the higher your levels of reactivity. Here, in conjunction with managing big emotions, the less capable you are to manage your emotions. Yeah, and there's obviously, you know, hierarchy too. These are the worst, yeah, or the highest level of confliction leads to destruction, self-destruction included. Yeah, so suicide and violence. Yeah, then a little bit better, yeah, quote unquote, physical health issues. Yeah, so you could turn this around and recognize that the more conflicted, the denser the energy, the more contracted the energy, the more, you know, physical it becomes, and the more threatening it becomes to your life. The more sort of regulated you become and healed. Yeah, healed and regulated are not the same things, but I'm using them, not the same processes, but I'm using them here. So regulation is a part of healing. Yeah, the more sort of peaceful you become. And it isn't here until you reach the place of truth with yourself, when you actually come into the green area here, where you can at least be neutral about things. Yeah, and neutral is not the same as dissociated. This is where many of us are mistaken. We cut things off and think that we are, you know, realistic about things. Cutting things off does not enable you to see truth. Yeah, it's a filter. You're cutting things out. And in fact, what you're doing is you're reducing your emotional range. If you are in truth, you can have access to your entire range. Yeah, and just as a reminder here, humans have 32,000 different emotions. Most of us just use 6 to 8 descriptors for emotions, and when we are in a conflicted state, we typically only use 2. Yeah, good or bad, or, you know, terrible and blissful. Okay, extremes. Yeah, when we're in truth, we can see the whole range, and that then helps us also to, you know, heal the heart connection that we have, and you know, here in this order then brings more clarity, brings more congruence. You know, we do less backpedaling, less, you know, inner narrative, less critical inner voice, and it becomes a lot more clear to us whom we want to be and how we want our relationships. Yeah, so it isn't until you're fully present in your heart and in the moment that you can recognize that you know, there really isn't a lot that you need to resist in life if you are in truth, if you are connected with your heart. Then you can see things the way they are, and you can learn to handle them. And then higher levels of inner peace are those that we strive for here. So in this, with the spiritual seeking, you know, we want to tap into our inner guidance, to our inner knowingness. We want to be able to trust in it. We want to feel, you know, levels of abundance and self-love and all these, you know, sort of spiritual values. Mandy, this is where the stuff comes in that you were referring to. But until you're here and you know that you're here, like for sure, okay, these things don't grip, okay? Truth is the minimum, yeah, and many of you have seen all the other webinars that I've done on emotional states, yeah, so getting, or the energetic quality of your emotional states, getting a grip on this is very, very helpful, because we can see that all emotions have a function, all emotions are important. There are no good or bad emotions, there are only good and bad expressions, higher and lower expressions, and we have that with anything in life, okay? these things that you all seeking, guys, here, this kind of stuff up here. Yeah, joy, bliss, healing, abundance, inspiration, true love. Okay, they cannot be accessed if you find yourself in lower energetic states. So what you come to realize is that what you need to learn is how to shift from a lower vibratory state into a higher vibratory state. And that's fundamentally here the self-coaching that you can do. You start out down here in the moment where you have the reaction, where you get triggered in your emotions. And the first thing you do is to actually admit to yourself that you're being triggered right now. This is as simple as like, wow, I'm really upset. Wow, I'm really triggered. Then the next step to that is, and all this can happen within a conversation, how am I truly feeling about this? And this is usually where the slowing down comes in. Slow down a bit, okay? Breathe, okay? You don't need to like go into the feeling because sometimes that's not appropriate. All you need to know is where this is coming from. Wait, what is this all about? Has my pride been hurt? Has, you know, is there an unmet need that I have? Am I not getting from the other person what I want to get, etc.? Then, and this is already the onset of self-healing here, comes or needs to come a disruptor, where you say, okay, wait, this isn't going well. This isn't going anywhere. I don't want this. This hurts me, or this isn't appropriate, or it's not okay. Yeah, I know I don't want to. This is not good for me. Then if you can still be present enough, you can ask yourself, well, wait, where does my energy go with this now? Yeah, and this is then the heart connection. This is already a very rather healed state. Yeah. Then and you see this in the Sacred Self-Healing course, it's a big part, asking for the payoff. What am I actually getting out of staying here? Yeah, Tina, go ahead.
Yeah, the trick is to get to number 5.
The trick is to get to number 4. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Because
and for most of us, it's actually 3, to realize how fucked up the situation is, how dysfunctional something is, and to actually say to you, to feel this within yourself that you don't, this is not true, this is not right, this is not okay. I do not want this to go any further. Yeah, to actively disrupt. You don't have to have a strategy. You don't have to have a fix. You just need to know when to stop. Okay. When you can then, you know, connect with it and even go as far as discerning, like, well, why am I keep getting into these things? Yeah, when you get to 5, okay, you're over the hump, okay, because right there comes, you know, all the narratives and the critical inner voice and all the stuff that you need to uncover. Yeah, how you deceive yourself. To be able to acknowledge your own part in this, you know, to see how, like maybe through your cutting off yourself from your emotions and sort of being numb or showing a blank face, how that leads to the confusions in the other, or how venting, you know, hurts other people's feelings. That then leads to a high level of understanding. This is when healing takes place. Yeah, you're now officially in a higher vibratory state. Recognizing your own part. This has to do with accountability and seeing how you show up. Not in the way that most of you do when you're stuck down here, because this is not to be confused with beating yourself up and feeling guilty and making yourself responsible for everything, especially the other person's feelings. That is not truth. This does not mean who is to blame, who's guilty. This means what is my part in it. Okay, yeah, because there's always 2. How am I further escalating, or how am I contributing to resolving things? Am I listening, or am I just trying to get my stuff out? Am I seeing the person with their limitations? Yeah, here the example with my first husband, many of you heard me say this before. I knew that he was an alcoholic. I'm raised by alcoholics. Every male friend or relative that I have is alcoholic. I know exactly what alcoholism is at that point. I went to Al-Anon. I knew everything about adult children of alcoholics, and yet I married an alcoholic. Why? Mandy, because of exactly what you said. Oh, I can heal that. Our love can heal that. I can bring out the better part in him.
Yeah.
And this is what I realized the moment I knew I wanted to get divorced. My part in this was that I just simply overrode everything I knew, every trauma, everything that I had, trying to prove to myself and the other, I can heal that.
It's
And
almost like the
obviously,
ultimate. It's like the ultimate in self-abandonment, isn't it?
it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But it's also egotism, because, you know, there's a form of specialness too. You know, what makes me believe that I can heal an alcoholic, okay, who doesn't want to heal himself? Because this was the smashing end of our relationship, was when I said, all I ever did was to try to love you and try to help you and try to make you a better man. And he said, but I don't want to give up drinking. I love my life. I never said I wanted to quit drinking. I like being an alcoholic. And in that moment, I was at 6. It dawned on me. It was me who wanted him to be a better person. It was me who thought he needed healing. Of course he does, but that's my specialness. He doesn't want to. If he needs healing, he needs to go to healer. Okay, not find another wife. He's on his 6th marriage right now. Okay, but you hear what I'm saying, right? Seeing your own part with an absolute clarity is when you know that you're healing, because now you can also decide what you no longer need. And in that moment, I decided I no longer need alcoholics in my life. There is no point. This is a karmic journey. This is a karmic task. I mean, I'm not the daughter of alcoholics and, you know, all of that, for no reason. Yeah, for the first 30 years of my life was dominated by other people's alcoholism or addictions. Okay, so I recognized I no longer need to try to fix other people. I need to take on my own karmic task and work on myself and not abandon myself. Exactly. Yeah. So obviously, you know, the childhood trauma is that you've been conditioned to care more for other people's needs and therefore, you know, forget your own. And I apologize, guys. I have a female dog in heat and a functional male, and they're divided by a window right now. And I don't know if you can hear the yelping in the background, but that's what is going on here. This cannot be healed. We have to wait for 2 more days. Yeah, so once you can see your own part in this, you move into bigger understanding the bigger picture, and that's then what actually allows you to really transcend this. Okay, you don't need to know the answers, you don't need to know the fix, you just need to trust in your own inner signaling and how that is actually telling you what to. And if you keep getting hurt through the same mechanisms, regardless of what your part in it is, you have to move out of that situation. It is not possible for you to resolve this if you are constantly getting triggered. This is the big insight, guys, that if you can realize that you're emotionally dysregulated in a certain situation, through a certain person, through certain circumstances, stop trying to fix that. Get out, disrupt. You need to get out of that situation and work with yourself. Then, yeah, once you're like here in this yellow green area, yeah, where you're at least sort of somewhat neutral, where you can feel yourself again and where you can see things the way they are, then you can start thinking about, you know, these higher vibratory states. Yeah, so what do I actually need to feel loved? How do I want this? What makes me feel safe? How can I learn to express that? And that is then when we can find better ways and reconcile. And not before that. You have to understand this. So because we're coming to an end here, I'm going to skip forward and just give you sort of the stages here that you need to work with, in emotional regulation. And there's a bunch of, self-reflection sheets that I've developed for you many years ago, identifying your triggers, identifying your imbalances, because your imbalances do, they exacerbate certain situations with certain people. So you need to know where your imbalances are. You need to know where your triggers are. And then you can also work with your boundaries and the way you perceive things. Yeah, this here, the boundary and perception check worksheet is really, really good for you. All three of them, and there's more like that, do the same thing. They guide you through the different perspectives: the physical, sensing, the emotional, emoting, the mental thinking, the spiritual viewing and believing, and the energetic quality of yourself. And as you're realizing that you are composed of these different layers, these different, sort of realms of self, yeah, you're beginning to understand yourself better and why you dysregulate. But let's just go through this here real quick so that we don't go over time more. This is pretty much the same as this one here. This is also the same. It's just, like in shorter command words for yourself. Number one, when you are finding yourself in a place where you're overwhelmed, where you're triggered, identify that you're overwhelmed. Do you guys think you can do that? To just simply say to yourself, whoa, I'm really overwhelmed right now. Whoa, I'm really confused right now. Whoa, I don't know what I'm feeling. Whoa, I'm triggered. That's something you can all do, right? Work on this. Work on just admitting it to yourself. That's all. And if you want to do better in relationship with others that you truly care for, then learn to say it out loud. The next step, and this is obviously something that happens within seconds, is notice what is happening in your body. This is really, really important for energetically sensitive, because energetically sensitives and trauma people, because there is a part in you that disconnects when you get overwhelmed, and you need to learn to feel this. It will be your body that shows it to you. Can you guys relate to that, what I'm saying?
You wanted to, number two, could that be the bloating in the second chakra, being like, you're so
although bloating takes a little longer. That's already, like in my experience as an energy healer, something that requires quite a few minutes of absorbing stuff. Okay. Typically people will feel it in their third chakra first, like a sort of a gut punch, yeah, and then the numbness in the extremities. Maybe also like something that like feels like a total contraction, like your body is contracted. Can you guys, this is an energetic term, can you guys relate to that? Energetic contract, when you like really, really pull in. For many of you, it also leads to trying to be small, making yourself small, trying to make yourself feel or be invisible. Yeah, that's important. You can't see the screen right now. I need to text Jeff to get the dog out of here. So connecting with your body. So the first thing is that you become more aware of when you get overwhelmed, confused, and so forth. And the second one is connect with your body right away. This is what a lot of these modalities are about: tapping and somatic therapies, touching yourself, you know, EMDR even to a certain degree, where you're trying to connect with your body on some level, either through your eyes, yoga, through your breathing, okay, through energy work. Yeah, so there's a lot of videos where I showed, you know, how to ground yourself, how to connect with your heart, and how to self-clear. So, you know, this when you're good at energy work, you can do this within a few seconds, all three of them. And that's a big part of the energy course that I have for those of you who don't quite know what exactly that means, you know, when you ground your energy, when you self-clear, when you connect. Okay, these are things that you need to build reference feelings for. You need to know what that feels like in your body when you're grounded, when you're connected or centered. And you need to know what it feels like when you clear yourself. You need to know what you can use to clear yourself. The whole entire Sacred Self-Healing Forum is full of videos with, you know, people sharing what they use, what works for them. You need to figure this out for yourself. Then number 3 is the disruptor, is where you need to realize you have to slow down. You have to gain more space, more time to, you know, do these things, yeah, to do this effectively. Yeah, sometimes, you know, it's enough to just say time out. Hang on, give me a moment. Or if it's really, really big, you know, you may need to, you know, ask for a break, take a walk, you know, whatever you can do that you know helps you to regulate yourself. You need to get a grip on yourself in that moment. It's very, very important. And the fastest way to do that is by slowing down. This sounds funny when you say it, and that's why it's often so counterintuitive, but slowing down helps you to connect and to regulate yourself. There's no solutions here at this point. You just need to know that whatever is going on is not good and that you can't continue doing that. It just makes it worse. Next thing is connect within. This is where the control of the floodgates comes in as an important part. Yeah, so learn to connect with your emotions without going into them. Okay, what is the predominant emotion that I'm feeling right now? Anger. So at first you just identified that you're overwhelmed or confused. Now you want to connect with and identify at least, and this is where we learn to control, to work with the energetic quality, at least sort of what the type of emotion is that you're dealing, not the cause, not the fix, just what am I dealing with here? Yeah, is this a deep hurt, a deep sadness, a deep, what is this? A deep anger, a deep shame, yeah? Just so that you even know what it is that you are experiencing. For some of you, if this isn't in the conversation, but if this happens, like say at work or, you know, texting or emailing or something like that, at that stage, it actually helps to write this down. Yeah, so that's the purpose of a diary or journal, is to write it down, to find a way to express it, but not to the person or situation that whom it concerns. Just sort of unravel that without going too deep into the emotion. Because that's number 5. You need to discipline your desire to vent, your desire to get relief from it. You need to discipline that, because the venting, guys, produces an hypnotic state in yourself. Have you guys ever experienced that? You talk about what happened, you call your friend and you say, guess what just happened? And then he did this, and then he said this, and then I felt like this, and then and you talk yourself into the emotion, into the dysregulated space again. You guys ever notice that? I think this is where Mandy, where your critique came in from earlier, you know, that talk therapy doesn't always help. No, it doesn't if you do it with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, you know, because typically it ends up in sort of some kind of sympathetic dysregulation, yeah, where somebody just chimes in and says, oh yeah, that's so mean and they should be this and this is so unfair. Yeah, that just makes it worse. Okay, so you need to discipline that. Writing things down, yes. Gaining clarity, yes. If you've slowed down enough, then you can actually deal with it in this like way without having to cut it off and without having to over mentalize it. You just like, I mean, I am feeling really hurt right now. Yeah. And what just happened needs to be handled somehow. Okay. But in that moment when I feel that, I should refrain from reacting, texts or emails or yelling at somebody. And this is why asking for a timeout is essential, because when you ask for a timeout, then you can collect yourself again and experience yourself in a more sort of like a more manageable place. If you force yourself through a situation where you're obviously already dysregulated, you're more likely to set yourself up for failure and experience yourself as sort of insufficient in your reaction, and then you beat yourself up afterwards. You feel guilty. So it's safer to ask for timeout, and then let some time go by, depending on the situation. Obviously, you need to feel out what's appropriate. Yeah, if you're having a fight with your spouse about something important in your relationship, and you take a timeout for 2 weeks, that's obviously not appropriate. Okay, a more appropriate thing would be to, take a 10-minute break, or if it's late at night, to call it quits, call it a night, and agree on talking about it tomorrow, because you both too tired, too dysregulated, or whatever led to the fight. Number 7, sometimes when you start getting a grip on things and you start to feel a little more collected, you realize that it was only because you were really hungry or really tired. Anybody ever been in situations like that? Also, time pressure can sometimes lead to that, where your reactions become short, harsh, or distracted. Yeah, so this is where your responsibility, and this is also your part, comes in. You need to understand what your actual needs are. Guys, you may laugh about this, but I drink so much water. A lot of times I sit, for hours at a time, and I drink lots of water. And let's say I'm done with the session, and Jeff comes and asks me a question or whatever, and it's a shift of energy for me, right? I just come out of a session, and then I realize that I have to go pee because I've been sitting there for 2 hours, and he wants something to resolve with me, or wants an answer from me in that moment, and I feel conflicted. There's a conflict in me because I want to answer it, I want to respond to it, but I really need to go pee. And it took me a while to actually say, hang on, time out, I need to go pee. Or, and then come back and obviously then talk about it in a more free or, more balanced way, because I'm more balanced. Yeah, sleep deprivation, hunger, yeah, hangry, wearing a hat, yeah, being hungry and tired is one of the main causes for fights. Yeah, and in those moments, all you really need is to connect with your true needs and make sure that you meet them yourself. Yeah, so what I truly need right now is a bite of food, or is some water, or I need to take a nap, or I need a walk. And then, after I took care of myself, of my fundamental needs, then we can have this conversation. Number 8 is then obviously the revisiting, and that's, the timing is up to you. You need to obviously have good reference feelings for when you're balanced, and when your needs are met, because then whatever issue is at hand can be resolved in a more productive way, in a more constructive way, more future or goal oriented, or like resolution oriented. Yeah, and then the resolution itself has to do with cultivating that and really embodying that, the way you show up. Yeah, if somebody hasn't really learned these things, which is common because most people haven't learned those things, and you can see that due to the power of your consciousness and your self-healing efforts, and they're not used to that because because of the family or how they were raised. Well, then all you really need to do is tell the other person how you feel about this. Tell them that you would like to cultivate more sophisticated ways of conflict resolution, yeah, of working through things instead of yelling at each other or slamming doors at each other, or, you know, these extreme big emotions that never lead to any kind of resolution. Yeah, tell the other that you are actually interested in resolution, that you care for the person, that you care for the relationship, and that you want to resolve this. And that's then when we speak of embodiment. Express that to the other person and cultivate this within your relationship. If the other doesn't want that, if the other shows signs that they're not able to or not willing to, then it's time to end the relationship. Then it's time to ask yourself why you keep hanging on. Because if other people aren't willing to go into a more healed or higher vibratory or, you know, more growth oriented place with you, then the reality of that is that they are not interested in the same growth as you are. Oftentimes you'll find that they're not interested in growth at all. This is the ego hallmark, because ego wants things to stay the way wants things to stay the way they are. Yeah, so only constant striving for higher expression leads to higher consciousness. It's really, really important to remember this. So there is no right and wrong, guys. There's only, you know, sort of the striving for more balance in your life. So this is the end of this emotionally or handling big emotions workshop. If you have any questions, it will be posted in the Sacred Self-Healing Forum. You can always also ask me on Skype or send me an email. I prefer if you do it in the forum, since most of you should be members of the Sacred Self-Healing and have the access to the forum. The recording for this workshop will be sent to you within the next 24 hours. It takes a while to process that. Just a quick announcement here. There is December is a big month. I'm already in encoding for December, getting ready for the energetic tune-up on Friday. This is Friday, 11 p.m. Our time. And what I do there, you guys know that, is actually Saturday, so it's Saturday, 11 p.m. My time, is an energetic clearing, then sending December energies through your system and see how you energetically respond to it. So this allows me to do a reading for you for December based on collective energies that are already in the field. There is a need for me to do something that I've already announced in November, something like a daily empowerment. This will be a live video, and people will have to sign up for that. So you can just sign up for that. You're going to get an email with the announcement. Also, and this is the important part here that I want you to know, is that as a Thanksgiving gift, I will give a 25% discount on everything at transCODES here in a couple of days. You as Sacred Self-Healing members will get that opportunity first. This was just something I do once a year or twice a year, you know, this, you know, to motivate people to get started on something. All that for us here to develop a more positive vision of ourselves for the future in times of uncertainty. It can be difficult sometimes. So with that, I wish you a lot of thanks. I wish you a lot of self-healing and a lot of Thanksgiving. Even if you're not in the United States, giving thanks is a very high vibratory spiritual practice, and that allows you to, you know, build a reference for how far you've already come. I want you guys all to remember this. When we go into the nitty-gritty of these kind of things like thinking and thoughts and emoting and sensing and so forth, sometimes it feels like we're just like at the beginning of something. This is true, but this has to do with our evolution of consciousness as humans. We are still quite in sort of infancy or early childhood with this. So don't feel bad. Those are all things that we are all working with, yeah, on one level or the other. Okay. Love you guys. Thank you for coming. See you soon. Bye-bye.